No one in that place had a clue who the new inmate really was, and they were about to learn a hard truth. Hell doesn't scream, hell doesn't warn you, it just shows up. The U.S. Federal Maximum Security Penitentiary was famous for housing the worst enemies of the state: international terrorists, deserter mercenaries, former agents who knew secrets that could never see daylight. Behind those gray walls, status was everything, and respect only lasted until someone more dangerous arrived. That morning, every set of eyes locked on the newcomer. He walked in shackled chains so heavy they dragged his own echo across the floor. Sergeant Mason Lee, steady like a soldier on duty, held the lead chain, but anyone could see it. He wasn't there to keep the inmate restrained. He was there to keep the other inmates from getting too close. A correctional officer checked a confidential envelope, took a breath, and announced, not for the prisoner, but for the curious ears around him: name, Marcus Drager. Classification, restricted access. Arms covered in military ink, muscles tight like coiled steel, shaved head, controlled breathing, eyes colder than the room. Marcus looked like a guy who had faced worse monsters than this place, and beat every one of them. Behind the bars, dozens of inmates watched in dead silent tension: hardened vets, ex-fighters, contract killers, men who'd stared death in the eye before. But at that moment, they were just spectators, and every single one of them thought the same thing. What the hell is this guy? Rumors spread faster than breakfast trays. Ex-Special Forces operator, a soldier with zero record anywhere, a government ghost. Closest thing to the truth. He was a problem. When Marcus hit the chow hall for his first meal, the local bully boys smelled opportunity. The biggest, a brick wall named Cole Ramirez, king of the yard beatdowns, strutted over like he owned the joint. Cole dumped ice-cold water over Marcus's shoulders. Water ran down the tattoos. No reaction, zero emotion, like it meant absolutely nothing. And that was Ramirez's first mistake. The bully leaned in. Around here, you ask permission to breathe. Marcus didn't respond. Didn't even look his way, just kept eating like he was alone. Guards didn't step in. That's how they judged who would survive there and who would become a hallway story. Ramirez tapped Marcus's arm. Just that. One touch. 3 seconds later, fate was decided. Ramirez dropped to his knees, choking for air. His second buddy flew backward like a rag doll. The third froze before his hand left his pocket. He knew he'd be next. The chow hall turned to ice. Nobody chewed. Guards glanced at each other, none willing to move, and Marcus just sat back down and asked for a second tray. In the surveillance room, Warden Roland King replayed the footage again and again. Front and center on his desk lay a file scribbled over in heavy black marks: Drager Marcus, status, terminated authorization, lethal force. King felt his blood go cold. This prison hadn't received a criminal. It had been handed a weapon. And someone powerful, very powerful, had decided to leave it locked up inside. Meanwhile, notes started showing up. Offers of protection, recruit invites from rival crews, threats written by shaky hands. Marcus ignored everything, not out of arrogance, but because he was waiting for an order, a voice, a signal from the real world, the one he was never supposed to return from. His silence told the one truth nobody wanted to accept. I was the nightmare of men way more dangerous than you. Inside those cells, fear changed direction. Predators realized they'd left the door open for something worse to come in. And the biggest mistake any bully makes, thinking muscles are real strength. That prison was full of giants, violent, cruel men shaped by pain. But the day Marcus Drager arrived, they all learned a lesson they'd never forget. A real predator doesn't bark, doesn't warn, he just strikes. Cole Ramirez would try to get his pride back. The guards would pretend they were in control. The warden would try to make sense of what he was seeing. But the truth was unavoidable. That man wasn't trapped in the prison. The prison was trapped with him, and when hell decides to move, there isn't a wall high enough to stop it. The United States Federal Maximum Security Penitentiary always operated under one simple rule: whoever controls the fear controls everything. And for years, that power belonged to Cole Ramirez, the bully who kept the peace with fists, threats, and a pack of followers who believed in only one law, the law of the strongest. But that morning, as Cole tried to hide the ache in his neck behind a forced grin, he knew something had changed for good. His fall wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. Everyone saw it, and nobody forgets when a king gets knocked off his throne in front of the whole kingdom. In security control, Sergeant Mason Lee was glued to the surveillance screens. He'd seen riots, killings, men destroyed by their own inner demons. But nothing like Marcus. That dude's coldness wasn't human. It wasn't instinct. It was trained. Lee flipped through the small, unclassified portion of the new inmate's file. Name, Marcus Drager. Military record. Classified training, not disclosed psych eval. None on record. The rest of the pages? Redacted. Blacked out. Locked away from anyone. Even the warden. Lee leaned back and muttered, "What the hell are you, Drager?" Silence answered him. The same silence that followed Marcus from the moment he stepped through those gates. In the chow hall, Cole fought an invisible war. His crew kept glancing around nervously. His rivals smirked behind their trays, and the guys who normally stayed neutral stayed far away. The moment fear disappears, power goes right out the window. Cole slammed the table and motioned to his closest guys, Torres, Duane, and Miller. "Yesterday didn't mean crap," he growled. "The newbie caught me off guard. Next time I'll wipe that smug look off his face." Torres nodded fast. Duane too. Miller, not so much. "That's not the kind of guy you go head-to-head with, Cole," Miller said quietly. "He moved like someone who's spent years fighting people way worse than us." Cole turned slowly, jaw tight. "You scared?" "I think everyone should be," Miller shot back. Cole took a breath, and deep down, he knew Miller was right. Meanwhile, Marcus walked the yard like he was mapping it out. His eyes tracked guard positions, camera blind spots, daily routine timing, criminal chain of command, who led, who obeyed, who pretended to be tough. No rush. Predators don't rush. They wait for the perfect moment. As he passed the isolation wing, a whisper slipped through a door slot. "Drager, you here to finish the job?" Marcus didn't turn his head, but his fingers clenched, just a little. Someone inside this place knew who he was, and that changed everything. From a distance, Sergeant Lee caught that micro gesture, and he didn't like it one bit. Inside administration, Warden Roland King pressed both palms on his desk. For the first time in his career, his lips trembled. He'd met dangerous criminals, psychos who'd kill over a slice of bread. But Marcus Drager wasn't a criminal. He was a professional, and professionals don't play games. King called higher-ups, Federal HQ. "I need authorization to transfer inmate Marcus Drager immediately." The voice on the other end was dry as dust. "Transfer denied. He could destabilize everything in here. That's exactly what we want to observe." King almost dropped the phone. They didn't want safety. They wanted an experiment. Out in the yard, lines were drawn. Those who wanted Marcus on their side, those desperate to prove they still ran the place, those praying they'd never cross his path. And right in the middle of it all, Marcus just waited. Because he wasn't on a mission to survive. He was on a mission to be patient. And when patience runs out, chaos walks in. Cole Ramirez glared at the newcomer with a desperate kind of hatred, not for revenge, but because he feared becoming nobody. In a prison where only monsters survive, the second you lose the crown, you're the next piece of meat. Cole wasn't stupid enough to strike alone. and Marcus knew that. So he stared into the sky, calm as a loaded gun. Let the hunt begin. Cole Ramirez didn't sleep. Not because he was in pain, he could handle pain just fine, but because for the first time since he got locked up, he felt real fear. And fear in a place like this? That's like blood in the water. It draws the sharks in. By sunrise, he already had a plan. If he couldn't do it alone, he'd use numbers. The yard opened at 9 a.m. The sun burned against the cracked concrete walls. Inmates scattered around like vultures circling fresh meat. Marcus Drager stepped in, escorted by 2 guards, not looking at anyone. Every step he took felt calculated. No anxiety, no rage, no rush, just control. And that freaked everyone out. Cole stood dead center in the yard, shoulders puffed, fists clenched, eyes locked onto the newcomer. "Hey, Drager!" he barked loud enough for everyone to hear. Every voice in the yard died instantly. Marcus stopped, turned his head, slow. Silence got so heavy it was like a coffin. Cole strutted 2 steps forward. "Last time, you caught me off guard. This time's different." Marcus didn't answer, didn't need to. Up in the tower, Sergeant Mason Lee gripped his radio tight, ready to step in if this blew up. But he also knew that if Drager moved like he did in the chow hall, even the guards might not be fast enough. Torres and Duane crept around Marcus from behind. Miller, still torn between fear and loyalty, hung back. Cole lifted his chin. "In here, you show who you are. Or someone will show it for you." Marcus looked at him, not like a threat, like something beneath him, predictable. Then he did the one thing more insulting than any punch. He turned his back and walked away. A small move, a massive message. Cole snapped, "Nobody turns their back on me!" He charged like a bull. Torres rushed from the right, Duane from the left, 3 on 1, just like it always worked before. Marcus drew one single breath, and the world slowed down. To the guards watching, it was a blur, a hip turn, an arm caught mid-strike. Torres hit the ground head first before realizing the fight had started. Duane swung for his face. Marcus barely shifted and used the guy's own momentum to slam him through a concrete table, splitting it in half. Suddenly Cole was alone, face to face with a silent monster. "Let's go then," he grunted, but his voice cracked. Marcus stared back. No anger, no rush, no fear. Cole threw a wild punch. One mistake. One sloppy move. Marcus moved. It wasn't a fight. It was a lesson. Cole hit the ground, chest empty of air, pride shattered, and for the first time in his life, he couldn't get up. Marcus didn't even finish him. He just stood there, calm, surgical, as if saying, "You're still not worth my time." The yard turned to stone. No one breathed. No one dared blink. Sergeant Lee felt his pulse spike, not because Marcus was dangerous, but because everyone else was now in danger. They had just learned something terrifying. Cole Ramirez was never the predator. He was just the biggest sheep. And Marcus was the wolf dressed in silence. Warden Roland King ordered everyone involved into isolation, but the message was already tattooed into the prison's bones. Marcus didn't need to speak to control the place. His silence rewrote fear. Cole was dragged away by 2 guards, eyes glued to the floor. The king was dead, even if he was still breathing. Miller, the only one thinking straight, whispered to himself, "If I was smart, I'd try to stand with him." But intelligence in prison, even rarer than freedom. Later, Sergeant Lee found Marcus sitting in his cell, exact same posture as before. No pride, no celebration. He fought because he had to, stopped because there was no point continuing. Lee exhaled. "You do realize everyone's going to come for you now, right?" Marcus lifted one eye, just one, and replied, voice low enough to chill the room, "They've never seen what a real hunt looks like." Lee stepped back, not afraid of what Marcus had done, but of what he was still capable of, because the prison no longer feared Cole Ramirez. No, now they feared something far worse, a highly trained killer, with patience. And when a predator like that decides to move, no walls are high enough, no guards are enough, no prayers are enough. There's only one option: survive the hell he brings. And here, hell has a name: Marcus Drager. The yard incident rippled through the penitentiary like a silent blast. There were no sirens, no guns drawn, no alarms screaming, but every slab of concrete in that place felt the shift. The old order was dead. And when order dies, chaos finds room to grow. Rumors ran wild down the corridors. He put Ramirez on his back twice without breaking a sweat. The warden's scared of him. He's not an inmate, he's a weapon. They say the government wiped his records. They say he came here to kill someone. Each new whisper tangled with truths nobody wanted to unpack. In a lockup like this, information is deadlier than any blade, and every conversation circled the same name: Marcus Drager. In a remote wing where daylight barely touched the cells, there were special cages, places for men who couldn't be shown the world, not punishment, protection. In one of those cells, an old man with a wild beard muttered the name over and over: Drager. Drager, Drager. He knew the name wasn't common, nor was it coincidence. Up in administration, Warden Roland King talked in low tones with his deputy and a federal analyst flown in that morning. This man could destabilize the whole place, King kept saying, sweat beading on his lip. The analyst, unnervingly calm, opened a folder that matched the top-secret file. Do you really think this place is under your control? He probed. King clenched his fist. This prison is my responsibility. The analyst smiled, not kindly, but with pity. Warden, Marcus Drager belongs to a program so classified the Pentagon won't even confirm it existed. King stared at the floor. The analyst added, when they found out he knew too much, that they erased him. Officially, Drager died 3 years ago on an operation that never happened. King closed his eyes. Then, why is he here? The analyst inhaled slowly. Because there's someone out there who shouldn't exist anymore, and Drager finishes what he starts. King staggered back like he'd been winded by an invisible blow. They hadn't sent Marcus to be controlled. They'd sent him as a tracer, as an executioner on a pending order. But who was the target? Back on the yard, Cole Ramirez tried to figure out where he'd lost the leash and how to get it back. He wasn't bright, but he knew the rules of survival. You either become an ally or you become a statistic. Influence was the first step to building allies. He pulled Miller aside. You got the gift of gab. Find out what he wants. Miller flashed a nervous laugh. And if he doesn't want to talk? Cole leaned in, eyes bloodshot with need. Then you find a way to survive. Miller took a breath and made a choice. Don't be that man's enemy. Sergeant Mason Lee, even more intrigued, started tracking every move Marcus made. Not like a guard watching a prisoner, like a man studying a coming storm. He walked up to the cell. Tell me, you here to kill someone? Marcus didn't answer. But his eyes did, frost cold and certain. When I find out, you'll be the first to know. Lee felt his stomach drop. Whoever the target was, they were breathing the same air. In the hidden wing, the old man kept whispering Marcus's name, growing more agitated, as if expecting him to appear at any second. Guards passing by heard him. He's back! He's back! And this time, it's for me, the old man muttered. The guard laughed. You think you're that important, Pops? But the old man stared at the door with a broken smile. I was the first to train him, and the first one he was supposed to finish. The guard paled. Trained him. Who are you? The old man tilted up his head, revealing a deep scar slicing through one eye. Name's Conrad Weiss, former Black Ops commander. And Draeger. He's my finest work." The guard stepped back, maybe 2 steps. Because the last piece of the puzzle had just walked into view, teacher and student in the same cage, the student carrying an unfinished mission. High above the yard, Marcus closed his eyes for 1 beat. His instincts hummed like a radar on full alert. His target was inside, watching, waiting. This mission wasn't paused, it was ready to start, and when Draeger completes a mission, no one hides. No one runs. No one survives trying to fight him. The only question left, who would be the first body to hit the ground? Dawn brought an eerie silence to the penitentiary. Not peace, expectation. Inmates moved like paranoid shadows. Guards walked with their hands hovering near holsters. And Marcus Draeger stood at the center yard, scanning the flow of the prison like a man studying a battlefield blueprint. He wasn't waiting for a fight. He was waiting for a signal. This prison wasn't the end of his road. It was the final checkpoint before the next phase of the mission. Miller approached slowly, hands up like he was handling a wild animal. "Look, I don't want any trouble," he rushed out. "I just want to know, what the hell are you, man?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He just stared, a look that felt like it could peel someone open from the inside. "Someone who shouldn't be here," he finally said. Miller swallowed hard. "So, why are you?" Marcus looked up at the guard towers. "Because there's someone worse than me in this place." That line hit Miller like an ice pick to the spine. In the restricted wing, Sergeant Mason Lee made his way toward the cell holding Conrad Weiss. The guard on duty warned him, "He's been freaking out since yesterday, keeps muttering non-stop." Lee nodded and stepped inside. The old man lifted his head, tired eyes, but a smile only trained psychopaths ever learn to wear. "You came to ask about the ghost?" Weiss taunted. Lee folded his arms. "I already know who he is. What I want to know is why he's here." Weiss laughed, sharp, cruel. "You really want the truth? Fine." He leaned close to the bars and whispered like sharing a curse. "Draeger was my finest creation, the most lethal, most precise, most controlled. He executed any order, until the last one." Lee's eyes narrowed. "What order?" Weiss's eyes glittered with sick pride. "He neutralized a political ghost, a global crime leader, but there was a second name on the list. Somebody who vanished before he could finish the job." Lee felt a chill crawl up his spine. "And that someone is here?" Weiss's smile widened. "Oh, yes. And that someone is me." Back in the infirmary, Miller found Cole Ramirez, neck braced, pride completely shattered. "Cole," Miller whispered, "he's here for somebody. It's not about power. It's a mission." Cole's hand clenched the sheets. "So what? He's gonna kill somebody?" "I think so." Cole looked away. Behind the brute exterior was a man who finally understood something. There are monsters, and then there are the things monsters fear. On the wall above the yard, Sergeant Lee stared down at Marcus with new weight in his chest. Marcus wasn't a convict. He was an active operator, a ghost with an unfinished order, a soldier with no leash and no humanity left in the rule book. Lee climbed down and crossed the yard. "Draeger," he called firmly. Marcus turned, just enough to acknowledge him. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, voice colder than steel. Lee drew a steady breath. "Your target is here, isn't he?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Lee asked the question no guard should ever ask. "You want my help to find him?" For a moment, Draeger actually studied the man. Saw no bravado, no fear. Just someone smart enough to step aside instead of standing in the way. "Stay out of this, Sergeant," Marcus warned, "or the people above you will bury you with the rest." Lee stepped back, not afraid of Draeger, afraid of the fallout. In administration, Warden King received a call that turned his blood to ice. "Warden King?" a distorted voice said. "Asset Drager is to proceed with the mission. Any interference will not be tolerated." King squeezed the phone so tight his knuckles went pale. "This will start a war in here," the voice replied, flat as death. "War is what we do best." Click, call over. And King finally understood. He no longer controlled his prison. That night in confinement, Conrad Weiss pressed his forehead against the bars, breath shaky. He knew Marcus would come, and he knew he couldn't stop him this time, but he still had one card left. He whispered into the dark, "If he's going to kill me, I'll take others with me." He pulled out a small device hidden under his bunk, something that should never have slipped past security, something delivered from the outside. A trigger, an explosion, chaos with a single click. In his cell, Marcus opened his eyes in the dark. Body calm, mind locked in combat mode. His instincts screamed like a military alarm. Weiss was preparing. The past was calling, and the mission couldn't wait any longer. Tonight Marcus wasn't planning on sleeping, neither was Weiss. It was time for the inevitable collision. Student versus mentor, assassin versus architect, ghost versus creator. The entire prison inhaled, because the secret war was about to be declared, and wherever a war begins, a graveyard grows right behind it. When the prison lights went out for the night, nobody slept easy. The yard felt too quiet. Corridors echoed with nervous breathing. Guards walked faster than usual. Something was wrong. Something was about to blow. In the special cell, Conrad Weiss kept the device hidden, fingers curled around the thing like it was his fate. He watched shadows crawl across the wall and knew time was short. "Marcus, come on," he croaked, smiling like a man who's already lost his mind. Weiss wasn't just a target. He was Marcus's architect, the man who'd turned a kid into a living weapon. And now he intended to prove he still had some control. Meanwhile, in the main block, Cole Ramirez gathered his crew in the dark. His neck throbbed more than his pride, but he decided he needed to reclaim whatever scraps of respect he could. "Listen up," he whispered, voice low and ragged. "This whole joint used to be ours. Feels like that guy stole everything." Torres ground his teeth. "He did, Cole." Ramirez shoved him against the wall. "So what are we going to do? Just take it?" Silence. No one answered. No one trusted themselves to challenge Marcus. Miller stepped forward, trying to sound calm. "Cole, I talked to him. Drager's not here to run the prison. He's after someone specific. He'll kill that person. Then he's gone." Cole clenched his jaw. "And until then, he calls the shots. You get that? He calls the shots. If he calls the shots, I'm the joke here." Dwayne took 2 steps back. He'd started to realize the problem wasn't Marcus. It was Cole's mangled pride. In control, Warden King swallowed the growing realization he no longer had command. The federal analyst sat beside him, unnervingly composed like a man watching storm clouds and taking notes. "If Drager's objective isn't completed soon," King whispered, voice cracking, "there'll be a war in here." The analyst folded his hands. "Sir, that war already started. You just haven't figured out who's winning." Down in Wing D, Sergeant Mason Lee walked toward Marcus's cell. He didn't know whether what he was about to do broke rules or sanity. He stopped at the door, looked at the killer sitting in the dark, and asked plainly, "You're going to kill Conrad Weiss, aren't you?" Marcus lifted his head slowly. "He got away with too much years ago," he said flat. "My job didn't end when they captured him. It ends when he's dead." Lee exhaled. "He's got something. I don't know what it is, but something got in from the outside." Marcus stood with the sharp precision of a soldier snapping awake. "Then time's up," he said. Lee knew he couldn't stop him now, only choose which side he'd be on. The exact moment Marcus touched the door, a siren tore through the prison. Emergency alarm activated. Red lights stuttered. Auto latches slammed, screams erupted from every wing. Weiss had triggered the device. Boom! An internal blast rocked the floor, throwing guards and inmates to the deck. Chunks of concrete flew, the restricted wing filled with smoke and dust. Chaos was unleashed. Marcus smelled the danger and looked up. The target was moving, the battlefield was set, and the hunt went both ways. Cole Ramirez saw his perfect window to take power back. "Free whoever you can! Wreck this place!" he shouted, drunk on the sound of collapse. Inmates poured into the corridors, ripping open half-secured gates, assaulting guards, driving the chaos beyond the edge. The prison turned into a maze of violent shadows, and in the center of it all, Marcus Drager walked straight into the fire. Not because he wanted to, because he was trained for it. In control, King barked orders no one followed. Lock down every wing, contain the breakers, seal the gates. But the analyst didn't move. "Drager has to reach Weiss," he said, voice flat as a ledger. "The rest of these people, they're just statistics." King stared, horrified. "You're insane. This is a prison full of lives." The analyst's face didn't flinch. Disposable lives. His is not. King felt fury and helplessness. The government had chosen a side, and it wasn't his. In the smoking ruins of the restricted wing, Conrad Weiss coughed through the haze, grinning with blood-stained teeth. "Come get me, Marcus," he rasped. "Finish the job." Teacher and pupil were officially at war. The mission was no longer silent. It was vengeance, resolution, debt being collected in cold blood. And Marcus Drager never left a debt unpaid. The explosion turned the federal maximum security penitentiary into a living hell. Dust rolled up like smoke from a volcano, waking after decades of silence. Sirens screamed, but no one paid attention. Chaos had overthrown order. Between shattered corridors and inmates losing their minds at a chance for freedom, Marcus Drager walked with steady steps, not because he was fearless, but because he'd survived worse hells before. Here, he was in his element. With every step he heard screams, guards calling for backup, inmates begging for mercy, monsters begging for blood. But Marcus had a target, and when he locked onto something, the rest of the world ceased to exist. In the control center, Sergeant Mason Lee fought to restore comms with every wing. Smoke jammed the cables, cameras flickered in and out. "Where is he?" he muttered. "Where is Drager?" Warden King was shaking. "If he reaches Weiss, that old man is dead, and it won't matter who else dies in the process." Mason Lee didn't blink. "If Weiss is half as dangerous as he claims, then Drager's doing the only necessary thing." King stared at him, stunned. "You're on his side." Lee took a slow breath. "I'm on the side that stops the worst-case scenario." As Drager advanced, prisoners followed, not out of loyalty but instinct. A silent predator attracts smaller predators. To some, he was hope. To others, the bigger nightmare. Miller, trembling, caught up to him. "Marcus, the wing Weiss was in. It collapsed. He might be dead." Marcus didn't break stride. "Weiss only dies when I say he does." Miller froze inside. "You're really gonna kill him?" "I follow orders," Marcus said. No glance back. Miller walked faster, desperate. "And after that, what happens to you?" Marcus stopped, turned his head, slowly. "They declared me dead 3 years ago. Whatever comes after doesn't belong to me anymore." Miller saw something no inmate there ever expected. Drager wasn't fighting for freedom. He fought because he didn't know how to stop. Duty and nothing else, finishing the last command, then disappearing. In another wing, Cole Ramirez watched Marcus carve through the chaos like he couldn't die. For the first time since the crime that put him there, Cole felt something old, jealousy. "That guy's not scared of anything," Dwayne whispered. Cole clenched his teeth. "He fears one thing, failure." That's what keeps him alive. Torres laughed nervously. He doesn't look like someone who fails. Cole narrowed his eyes. Then we just got to make him fail. But the words came without conviction. Even he didn't believe them. Marcus reached the restricted wing, twisted steel, heat still rising from blown-out walls. He stepped inside, alert. Bodies on the ground, guards and inmates, equal in the smoke. Then he heard it. A raspy, low voice. Still alive. Draeger, I knew you'd come. He found Conrad Weiss, slumped against a wall, bleeding but smirking. Still so predictable, Weiss spat. A weapon only knows how to fire. Marcus knelt. Not anger, just duty. You here to finish the assignment? Weiss sneered. Gonna erase the man who built you. Marcus grabbed the back of his neck, pulling him close. You destroyed who I was, he whispered, and now you destroy who I could become. Weiss cackled, blood dripping from his lips. I gave you purpose. Without me, you're just another lost soldier. Marcus closed his eyes, gathering strength not to kill, but to choose. Maybe it's time I find out who I am without you. For the first time, Weiss showed fear. No, don't do this, he begged. You are my legacy. Marcus drew a long breath, but before he could act, gunshots cracked down the hall. Marcus turned on instinct. Sergeant Mason Lee stood in the doorway, gun raised, eyes wide. Draeger, stop, he shouted. Don't do this. Marcus held still. In his hands, his final link to the past. In front of him, the only person trying to stop his fall. Weiss hissed, voice dripping poison. You have no choice, boy. A weapon is only useful when it fires. Marcus felt something inside him break loose. He wasn't a weapon. He wasn't an order. He was Marcus Draeger. And in that second, he made the first choice of his own life. He released Weiss. The old man collapsed, stunned, defeated. Lee lowered his gun slightly, relief breaking through the panic. You held yourself back, he breathed. Marcus rose slowly. The target has changed. Weiss's eyes blew wide with terror. Who's the new target? He screamed. Marcus stared down at him, voice like a blade. The man who ordered them to kill me. Weiss's breath left him. He knew exactly who that was, and that man was much closer than anyone realized. Lee understood everything in that moment. Marcus wasn't just a programmed weapon. He was a soldier making his own decision. And soldiers, once they choose their own cause, cannot be stopped. The war had changed direction, and hell was just getting started. Conrad Weiss lay on the floor, breath rasping, his face a mask of dust and blood. The man who once forged perfect soldiers now cowered before one of them. And the worst thing for him wasn't the pain. It was the loss of control. You can't rewrite the rules, Weiss snarled. You were made to obey. Marcus Draeger stared at him with absolute cold. And you were made to die, he said, turning his back. There it was, the moment the past unraveled. Marcus no longer carried an order, he carried a choice. Sergeant Mason Lee stepped closer. You saved his life, he said. I only delayed the end, Marcus answered. Lee exhaled. Who's the new target? Marcus turned his face toward a shattered surveillance camera and without looking back said, Someone who profits from ghosts. Lee understood instantly. The villain wasn't only inside the prison. He was watching, giving orders, pulling strings. Weiss's death wouldn't be punishment. It would be a cover-up for a deeper secret. In control, the federal analyst watched the feeds with a satisfied smile. The asset is performing as intended, he observed. Warden King, pale, stared at the analyst like he was looking at a real demon. You wanted Weiss dead, King said, not to close a mission, but to erase evidence. The analyst tilted his head as if it were obvious. Weiss knew too much. If Draeger kills him, problem solved. If Draeger weakens, we handle the rest. King stepped back. You turned a man into disposable project. The analyst's smile was hollow. Director, at that level there are no men, there are resources. Marcus left Weiss behind and walked through the wreckage of the restricted wing. Miller ran after him, breathless. "Marcus!" he called. Marcus stopped. "You gonna kill the man who made you?" "No, not anymore," Marcus replied without hesitation. Miller blinked, confused. "Then who?" Marcus's eyes locked on the admin tower. "The man who signed my death certificate." Miller swallowed hard. He pictured the name and didn't dare speak it. In the infirmary, Cole Ramirez received makeshift care. His crew was scattered. Some fled, some fought, others just watched the power structure collapse. The blast had shown the truth. Cole had never been the top predator. He was the biggest fish in a tiny tank. Now, a shark was loose. "That guy's gonna take everyone down," Miller warned Cole's circle, trying to rally them. Cole shook his head. "He doesn't run this place. I run this place. I still run this place." No one believed him, not even Cole. In an isolated sector, Marcus found an emergency phone tossed among the rubble. The wires were still live. The line buzzed with interference. He picked it up. "This is Draeger," he said plain. For a beat, nothing. Then an electronic voice answered, "The asset is out of protocol. Proceed with total neutralization." Marcus smiled for the first time. "Then come neutralize me." "Neutralization initiated," the voice replied. The line went dead. Marcus held the phone like a declaration of war. They were coming to kill him, but that wasn't new. They'd tried before. The difference this time, he wasn't following orders anymore. He was making them. Sergeant Mason Lee caught up to him. "Who was on the line?" "The man behind all of it," Marcus said. "The one who thinks he can control me like a disposable weapon." Lee rubbed his face, exhausted. "So, the target isn't Weiss." Marcus's stare burned. "The target is the government that made me into this." Lee felt the weight of the sentence sink in. This wasn't a local fight. It was political, dirty, eternal. As they spoke, the sky opened with a metallic rain. Tear gas canisters shattered windows and slammed into floors. Tactical teams of guards flooded the corridors. They weren't coming to rescue anyone. They were coming to erase anything that could blow a hole in the truth outside. The prison became an extermination zone. Mason Lee grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. "If you stay, you die," Marcus answered, steady. "If I go, something much bigger survives." The ghost soldier did the unexpected. He handed one of the gas canisters back into Lee's hands. "If you want to live, follow me." Lee looked at the device. He realized his life was now in the hands of an ex-inmate who should never have been caged. He took a breath. "I'm with you." Marcus nodded. "Then today, we pick our side of history. And when a warrior like him picks a side, the whole world feels the impact. The prison was unrecognizable, hallways choked with smoke, gates hanging open, guards stumbling in confusion, inmates driven wild by the taste of freedom. It was like hell had taken physical form and decided those walls would be its home. At the heart of the chaos, Marcus Draeger walked straight toward the administration building. Beside him, Sergeant Mason Lee, now fully aware that the only line between survival and slaughter was a government-declared dead assassin. "As soon as we get there," Lee panted, "what are you planning to do?" Marcus never took his eyes off the path ahead. "Set this place free," he answered. "How?" Lee pushed. Marcus spoke one single word: truth. Inside the control room, Warden Roland King tried to hold himself together as heavily armed federal operatives stormed in, the government's dirtiest branch. The federal analyst stood at the center of it all. He pulled every string, gave every order, watched the destruction with ice-cold fascination. "Cut the feed, shut the power down, kill the remaining cameras," he commanded with surgical calm. "From now on, reality is whatever we decide." King pleaded, desperate. "You got what you wanted. Take Weiss. Let Draeger live." The analyst turned slowly, a faint, cruel smile forming. "Director King, your only mistake was thinking Draeger should live." Marcus and Lee reached the final corridor. 2 steel doors. Beyond them, the true monsters of this mission. Marcus inhaled, not to steady his breath, but to bury any hesitation left inside him. "They erased me," he said, "and everyone who knew the truth. Weiss was the last one standing, besides me." Lee swallowed. "And now they're going to try to kill you, for real this time." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to. He placed his hand on the door and pushed. The entire room turned toward him the moment he stepped inside. Weapons rose, no hesitation. Mason Lee lifted his hands. Marcus simply stopped. The analyst swiveled his chair slowly, looking at Marcus with twisted satisfaction. Well, well, the ghost finally shows up. Marcus took 2 strong steps forward. "You hunted me because you can't stand someone you don't control," he said, voice like stone. The analyst laughed. "Draeger, control is what separates us from chaos. You're a malfunction, a weapon that refuses to fire, a product that thinks it has a soul." Marcus clenched his fist. "I don't think, I do." The analyst raised his hand, and all the agents fired at once. But Marcus was faster. He dove behind a desk while Lee dropped low, yanking the analyst down with him just as bullets shredded the room. Marcus rolled, silent and lethal, one elbow to a throat, one arm snap, dropping 2 agents like shadows collapsing. Lee disarmed another guard and covered his unlikely ally. "Go, I'll hold them off." Marcus charged deeper into the room, knocking down 2 more, and stopped only when he reached the analyst, who was scrambling toward a fire exit. He grabbed him by the collar, slamming him into a wall. "Give me one reason," Marcus growled, "not to end this right now." The analyst tried to sound fearless. "Because I can still keep you under control." Marcus raised his arm to strike, but froze. At that exact moment, Conrad Weiss appeared in the doorway. Bleeding, limping, but fueled by madness. His eyes burned with obsession. "Finish what you started," he roared. "I made you for this. You're not here to think, you're here to obey." Marcus slowly turned his head. On one side, a twisted past. On the other, a manipulative present. Neither would own him. "I'm not your creation anymore," he said to Weiss. "I'm my own ending, and my own beginning." He shoved the analyst to the floor, refusing to kill him. Then he picked up a gun from a fallen agent and threw it away. Weiss screamed like a rabid demon. "Coward! You had a purpose!" Marcus looked upward, speaking to the last shred of memory inside him. "Now, I have a choice." He turned to Mason Lee. "We're leaving. The truth leaves with us." Lee nodded, breathless. "I'm right behind you." Marcus looked down at the trembling analyst. "You're going to answer for this," he said. "In daylight." For the first time, the analyst looked terrified. Marcus headed toward the exit, Lee on his heels. Before crossing the doorway, Marcus gave Weiss one final verdict. "You wanted me to be the perfect weapon." Weiss smirked, gasping. "And you failed." Marcus didn't even look back. "No, I evolved." He closed the door behind him. The sirens fell quiet. The explosions faded. Chaos still reigned, but Marcus no longer belonged to it. He had risen above, and when a ghost stops taking orders, it's the living who learn to fear the dark. The prison was still in full lockdown when Marcus and Sergeant Mason Lee pushed through the wrecked hallways. Alarms fading, screams dying out, fear changing hands. The most dangerous men weren't the inmates anymore. They were the ones in suits, pulling strings from the shadows. "How do we get out?" Lee asked. "You still have clearance," Marcus replied. "That should be enough." They reached one of the reinforced exits leading to the yard. Lee swiped his badge. "Nothing. No power," he muttered. Marcus exhaled and braced his shoulder against the steel. "Then we use force." With one powerful drive, he tore through the damaged lock. Metal shrieked in surrender. Cold darkness greeted them outside. Helicopters swept across the sky. The government was erasing evidence. "If they spot us, they'll shoot," Lee warned. "Then they won't spot us," Marcus replied. They raced through the shadows, Marcus leading, slipping past sensors, cameras, and armed patrols. Every move a reminder. He had once been trained to be a living shadow. He wasn't there to fight. Not now. He was there to survive. When they reached the main gate, Lee tried another access code. This time, it clicked. A harsh alarm blared. Gate open. Freedom. "Once we're out," Lee asked, "what's next for you?" Marcus stared into the black horizon. "Find the one responsible and drag the truth into the light. That could get you killed," Lee warned. Marcus answered like a man who'd already crossed that line. "To them, I'm already dead." They stepped through the gate. Behind them, hell was left without its quietest demon. Marcus Drager was no longer a prisoner, no longer a weapon, no longer anyone's property. He was a man at war with the very system that created him, and the system knew it. A single message echoed over the prison radio: "Ghost loose. Hunt initiated." The game wasn't over. The battlefield had simply changed. Once they cleared the last concrete wall separating the world from hell, Marcus and Sergeant Mason Lee stopped atop a ridge. Behind them, prison sirens faded, ghosts losing their grip. Dawn was breaking. The first sunrise Marcus had seen as a free man, not as a programmed weapon. Weiss was in custody. The federal analyst was detained. The truth about the ghost program would finally come out. Marcus closed his eyes and breathed in. For the first time in years, he felt peace. "So, what now?" Lee asked. Marcus looked out at the waking world with the calm of someone who'd won his personal war. "Now, I live," he said. He took his first step into the real world. This time, owning his fate. If this story hooked you from the very first line, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who'd love it, and drop your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear what you'd do in a situation like this. Your support keeps this channel alive. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss another story like this. If you crave more tension, twists, and edge-of-your-seat action, check out our other videos. There are plenty of gripping stories waiting for you.